Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And it is my honor to introduce today's guest, Tevia Hoalst. Hi, Tevia.
Hi, thanks for having me, Adi.
You are very welcome. And you are the founder of TeKoda Accounting. So we're going to have a conversation here about entrepreneurship, about your journey, about how you got to where you are and your future plans of expansion, which you definitely have a lot. And also, wherever the conversation will lead us, but, it might be about the balance between being an entrepreneur and having a family, between traveling and working, between doing the things that energize you and having to then implement the things that maybe are not as energizing, but still need to be done. So eventually you can pass it to somebody else. So you are in TeKoda Accounting, you're passionate about building a strong company and strong company culture that supports a healthy, positive workplace, which is absolutely important. And, as you wrote in your bio, you believe that your team thrives and your client experience gets to the highest level of service. That's when your team thrives. It's getting that wow experience for your clients, and that definitely energizes and creates high morale for the whole team, which I can completely relate to. I think it would be great if you can we can start by you telling us about your journey. Like, how did you get started, and what did you realize you are an entrepreneur, and how did it get started?
Yeah. Which was, my grandfather had his own company, but I was not really raised in my nuclear family with entrepreneurship. And so it wasn't something that was on my horizon. I just always knew I was kind of a difficult employee early on, from the perspective of I like to ask lots of questions. I'll ask for more work. Like, if I'm going to be here, I want to maximize my time, right? And this is an old antiquated system. Can't we make it better? And very question oriented and education. And sometimes employers, which I am now one, just need their employees to do the job. So there was always a little bit of a disconnect that I hadn't quite pinpointed the solution for. And it wasn't until I was, at the end of my college, and I was just a really busy college student. I had multiple jobs. I always wanted a lot going on, that I had an opportunity to be a mentor. And it let me know, oh, there's this other way, and I get to build it, right? I don't have a boss. Nobody's telling me to be quiet, sit down. So that was kind of the initial. And what kicked off my company is I worked for a big corporation out of college, generally a wonderful company, but my particular department wasn't running real well. And the morale was very, very low. And I looked at my husband at that point after 5 years with them, and I just said, I know I can create something more valuable to the employee, which I understood translates to value to the client. So I started out, I said, what will people pay me to do before I have a team that's better than me? And that was in accounting. We do not step into the tax space. I feel like there's a lot of opportunity there that's already available. We like to work with CPAs. We do all what you would call the internal accounting of a business, your bookkeeping, bills, invoicing, sales tax, payroll. We do daily transactions for a lot of our customers, clear down to just monthly close and financials. So I really focus on connections in our company and culture. And that has served us well. We yesterday turned 7 years old, and our journey has been really wonderful. And we have less than 1% turnover in our team and our clients, because I think everybody understands the value that's created when you have consistency within your company and fantastic processes.
Absolutely, yes, and fantastic processes, but it's not only processes, it's people and processes.
Yes.
And this morning, for instance, we created internally a new process that we wanted to follow, and my production manager and the office manager followed it great, and it was so easy for me to then execute it. So I really validated them for that, and I said, well done. And I was thinking to myself, it is processes and people, but when you have the right people, they can execute the right process. That's a winning formula. And of course, then you have the technology to execute it. But when you have that together, it is priceless.
Yes, and as we learned, we just attended a deals conference for business, and it was just hammered, hammered, hammered. Your value is in your processes, and is it repeatable? Is it efficient? Is it duplicatable? And if though you don't have those things in place, call Audie, get that figured out.
That's right. Thank you.
Yes.
But you also have to have, we both service the same entrepreneurs in terms of like making their business more valuable, because we all know that without a good books, you can't make good decisions, and you can't even sell the company because the picture is incorrect.
Yeah.
So I think we are both in that area of professional services, where we work with other entrepreneurs to make sure that their businesses are valuable and they're sellable and they're exitable, or they can operate without them. Before we go into dive a little bit more into what you said in terms of the culture and how you built it, why did you call what's the name of the name of the firm is TeKoda. How did you come up with that name?
Yeah, the kind of quicker story is we originated. I am an entrepreneur. I am not a creative. So I actually fumbled around for quite a while, 7 years ago, pre the beginning of the company. And I wasn't really finding anything I loved. And if anybody's tried to name a company and trademark it, everything's taken now, right? So we had a trademark lawyer suggest that we make up something, because that's an easier trademark to get. And early on, I had connected. My company is about service. We want to bring value to our clients and our team. And I have actually a Newfoundland dog. I'm an animal lover. His name is Coda, and he was intended to be a service animal, a therapy pet to take to children's hospitals and so on. And so, in my mind, he is also for service. So the original to a couple other options out there. And when we talked to a trademark lawyer, he had said, make it up. And so my husband actually came up with mixing the beginning of my name with Coda, and that sufficed because I didn't really want to change the name. So that's how we came up with TeKoda. It's a mix of me and our service culture.
That's beautiful. What a beautiful name, and what a beautiful story behind it. And it sounds it sounds Japanese almost, like you have like it's like, it sounds great. It sounds very, very appropriate to what you do. And then you can tell the story behind it, which makes it part of the brand. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, you were talking about creating culture, and in your previous company, how it was demoralizing to work in that culture. What did you identify as those things that actually reduce the morale in your previous company, that that you knew that then you have to change, or when you have your own company, it's not going to happen?
Yeah, what a great question. I actually haven't been asked that before. So good job. Entrepreneur
Thank
we
you.
have, right? Is what did we go through? What didn't work? What do we want to change? And a lot of it was, I always say to my team, we empower them with independence. We hire them, we trust them, we know they're phenomenal at what when they care a lot. situation that we've created in TeKoda is empowerment, independence, trust. You know, I always tell my team, you're adults. You are very intelligent. You choose to be here. We give them kind of a decision tree that ties to our values, and they all have that at their workspaces. And the communication consistently to them is, if you are making decisions within our values and you kind of follow the decision tree for some process, we will back you management for every single little thing. We're not going to micromanage you. So we work a lot for empowering them to do the best by the client and the company at the same time.
That's true, because when you micromanage, then you feel like you have like no responsibility, and you're not being
Yeah.
accountable, and then you really don't care if you do a good job or not, because somebody else will take the hit on it, or they will come and clean up the mess, or you feel like you're gonna be yelled at or be criticized anyway. So you
Mhm.
don't have that sense of pride. You don't have the pride of ownership of what you do.
Yes. Yep.
So how do you implement that now in your company in TeKoda? Like, how do you actually make sure that your employees are held accountable to what they're doing and they feel that accountability?
Sure. I mean, accountability, I think, in life is one of the most precious things that we can have, because if we personally don't hold a lot of accountability, then, no one else is going to be able to do that either. So I think at the foundation, it's finding the right people, because we can't really hold them accountable if they don't care about that. So making
True.
sure we use Culture Index for hiring. We phenomenally love that system, and it works really well. We work really hard to find, for an EOS term, the right people in the right seat. And we think we really have that worked out in the team at this point. But the way that we hold them accountable is, we have regular meetings. They obviously have KPIs with what we do. There's, daily, weekly, monthly tasks that have to be completed. And we have team leaders that keep track of that and check in with them and just see how they're doing, what support they need. But it really does go back to having great systems and processes that we know when something's off, and it's not 6 months down the line when we're figuring out, oh gosh, like we thought this was happening and it's not. So it's really having a solid process to understand how they're performing.
That's very true. You know that accountability actually it's an accountant term, right? I mean, it's counting, because in the old days, like what does accountability comes from is like, you open in a market, like in an open market, and you start counting the money, like to show, like
Mhm.
if you were in charge, like the early days of banking, you're in charge of something, then you count back to show that everything is there. So that's really
Mhm.
accountability, is like showing that you can open it up and show that everything is there that you're supposed to be doing or that you were entrusted with. So it's definitely very appropriate to your business that you have accountability. I'm interested about the KPIs and tying it into a process, because that's what I always tell our clients is like, it's great to document, but it's only as good as you're actually going to implement it and use it. And one of the ways to make sure, using another EOS term, the followed by all, making sure that the processes are followed by all, is that you have a way to measure the effectiveness of the process. So for instance, if let's say you are in the trades, let's say you are an installer of some kind, and you go into somebody's home, they sign off, something goes bad wrong the next day, or you forgot something, or it's not as it didn't, the outcome is not what you expect, what was expected, then you have a callback. So that's an error. It costs you money. So an example of creating and optimizing a process that if everyone follows it correctly, we reduce those errors. So that would be a great metrics to measure, is the number of errors and how we reduce it because we follow the process. If there are still errors, let's say errors went to 10 to 5, so we know that we cut it in half, still errors, let's look at the process. Where is it not tight, or what is happening? And let's fix that so errors are at 0. That is a very, it's very easy to picture that as a KPI to see that the process is not working. How do you do that in your business, in a professional service business where you have a checklist of things to do? How do you measure the effectiveness of the process against the KPIs?
I think two things come to mind, and I'll talk about it in the form of like when we're onboarding someone new, because that's really the test of our processes, right? Is can someone else duplicate this? And the first thing is when we have someone new come in, generally once our team is like cut loose, they work at their own schedule. They can create their day, and make their own processes. But when they first come in, we issue them a schedule. Everybody works virtually from home, so a lot of independence there. But initially, we create their first like 3 weeks, and we actually do a lot of co working. So we have a virtual office space, and their lead will actually work through their day with them. So they can be there to support them, answer any questions. We have a lot of training materials and videos that, some of their day might be go watch these 2 videos on such and such process and then come back and we'll discuss it, and so lots and lots of co-working so that we are transferring our values, we're transferring our thought process. And then on the back end, we always check in with our new hires, but then consistently with our team, and we debrief and we say what's working for you, what would you change, and we take it with a grain of salt because everyone learns differently, so we're not necessarily always changing the process, but we take their feedback and we try to determine, because again, we empower our team to think. So the way that we document our processes is we communicate kind of like an 80-20 rule. We're going to get 80% of what is it that must be done and very clear on deadlines and tasks. And then there's 20% that is use your brain. And does this make sense right now? Does this work? And so anyway, we're always checking back in on them and asking, do you have any feedback on the process? Do we need to update the process? Has something changed with the client? And that system
on the processes, especially when you roll it out to new people. And also when you write the process, you want to definitely check within the organization to make sure if anything is missing. And to that point, when we document, we also, very similar to what you described, we also want to include the why behind it. Like, why are we doing this step? So then it's not prone to be changed because people understand the reason behind it. So you give them the independence to think, and then they can, if there is room to change, they can change that, but maintain the why. Because you don't want to restrict people too much. You said at the beginning, you are an entrepreneur, not a creative, but you are a creative because an entrepreneur has to be creative, and you're creating every single time. So even when you're doing bookkeeping, you're reconciling, you're doing this, you are recording the transaction. Maybe you find a better way to do it, but the why behind it, like this is why we do it, doesn't change. And then if there is a better method, then it can be communicated to everyone. So going back to my question, that's a great answer in terms of the onboarding, but let's say they got onboarded and they are working. How do you measure that their output is the right one? I mean, do you just know because they have a certain amount of clients that they have to service? Is it no errors, no complaints from the clients are very satisfied? How do you measure that?
Yeah, so I'd touch on 4 points with the internal process. One is, are they hitting the internal deadlines that we have created? And 2 would be, we have an internal QA process that a secondary person does. So that would touch on the errors. And we're documenting, how much feedback did they get on the work, if any, and kind of having a scoring system there for a KPI. We also are doing feedback from the clients. Like every single month, our culture manager checks in with the team and asks, how would you score each client's happiness? Whether we've had direct feedback from them or whether we're kind of making an assumption based on our interactions with them. And anybody below, at a 4 or below, we are dissecting and we are talking about, and how do we bring that up and why is it that way? And so those are just all internal KPIs that they have that we're checking on, and working alongside them to make sure that we're functioning well.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. We do the same. We actually have the same process. So when I'm listening to you, I go like, oh wow, we have such similarities because we also have a QC system where we have a client success, we call her the client success manager, and she reaches out to our clients once a month, whether, first of all, with a written survey, but if they want to talk, definitely they can talk. I mean, we prefer phone calls, but we also be respectful of our clients' time, and not everybody wants to jump on a phone call every month, but we have a very thorough survey they can fill out and give us the feedback. And then everything that is not perfect, we also dissect it and figure out why and what can we be improved. And I think that that particular point is so important because, I mean, obviously it came about because when you don't do that, then you lose track and you don't know how the client is doing. And maybe there is small little tweaks that we can make that I tailor-made to them, and then makes the experience so much better.
Yes. Yeah. So funny enough, another process that we can talk about is my partner and I just went in May to the Disney Institute, and exactly what you're talking about, they call them touch points. And so we've actually been going through a process, because we're so service oriented, of documenting the customer journey and what are the current touch points that we have, and how do we increase that? How do we take advantage of more opportunities to bring value to them and to increase those positive touch points? So I think that's a great exercise for everyone to do. That's, I mean, very value based.
That is absolutely, and that is a process that needs to be documented, and every company should do that. It's the client journey and then the touch points on the client journey and how to increase that experience. And it might be that just communication alone is important, because some companies don't even have that communication. So if you communicate to the client, first of all, you have to figure out of documenting what are the measurements of success that we told the clients we're going to evaluate the progress of the program against, and also what was promised. And when we're doing the quality control or the check-ins every so often, like every 30 days or whenever it is, we measure it against it. I mean, did we accomplish that? Are we on target? Are we on track? And I think that's, like, I look at it for myself. If somebody does it on me, let's say I'm your client and you're doing it, then I feel heard, I feel I'm important, and I feel that my goals are not the same as another person's goals, and I'm being heard. So those touch points are super important. Do you have some examples of those touch points that after you went through this process or this exercise, you figured out, oh, that's a touch points I didn't even think about?
Yeah, not one that we discovered from the training. We're still going through that process to implement them, but one that we already did that was reinforced at the training, and we kind of like patted ourselves on the back that we already had it figured out. One that's actually been super impactful and very easy to do, very low cost. We have our admin manager, and one of the things that we do, because we do actually want to be checked in with our clients and what's going on with them, and where can we serve them better and have more touch points. We follow all of our clients business socials, and with our business social, and our admin manager actually she monitors that. And when they have something that they post about, that it's something they won, or even if they're posting a life event that they post on the business side, we very intentionally, genuinely will send something out, whether it be a card, or we've had clients go through hard things and we'll send them some flowers. We had one the other day, was a grandpa for the first time, so we sent something for that. And it's just a very intentional, thoughtful, that behind all these businesses are humans. And, we need to care about each other and understand what's important to each other so that we can serve you better. And I have to tell you, doing that, I have gotten more feedback on a simple card that meant so much, because who in our day and age, writes like handwritten cards to anybody anymore? It just doesn't happen. So I've gotten so much. I do every 6 months, I do check-ins with all the clients. And so I'm talking to them at least twice a year, and I'll get on. And the first thing they will say is, if they've gotten something from us, they'll go, I have your card here, or thank you for acknowledging this event in my life or my business. And they really, really appreciate it. And that I think has probably been the number one that I have verbally gotten feedback from the clients that they really enjoy that being, they're not the business, being treated as a human. And that makes a difference.
That's beautiful. We do the same. We just have a client that she won an award for the fastest growing company, and it's beautiful. Yes, and I have it on my list here to, write her a card. I mean, that was already on because I was like, oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. We need to acknowledge that and be human and nurture those connections, which is very, very important. Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, future. What's the future like? What are your future plans?
Oh, the future is bright. I'm so excited. I was just telling my husband the other day, I feel like I'm in this phase of my business where, yes, I've been doing it for 7 years, but I feel like I was building to now. We're an EO company, so we've made it over 7 figures consistently for years, and we've got our processes dialed. We're running really well. And so now to me, I'm like, that was phase one. Like, we're here, we're stable, our clients are happy. We are ready to blow it up. And so I've been having active conversations about acquisitions. This week and last week, we're having conversations with all the money people, which is interesting and new to go through, and just doing the education of not only growing in an organic way, which is how we've always grown, but in an intentional way to go source companies that we can merger acquisition and add to what we're doing. And the idea is just to serve more. And, the traditional way that accounting works, there's not a lot of communication. It's very transactional. I want to position our company to just be another option where you're hopefully getting a lot more connection and value for your money. And, some people care for that and they want that instead of what else is out there. So we're going to go big, and we're going to make sure our brand is known and that we're an alternative option.
Beautiful. That is such a breath of fresh air in this in this whole field, and just talking to you today is so energizing. And I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope our listeners as well. I'm sure they did. We are so aligned, and we can talk forever. You're probably going to be a recurring guest on this podcast because we have so much more to talk about, and definitely follow you throughout. I mean, acquisition, it's a whole different thing that I actually wrote an article, and I'm going to include it in the show notes for CEO World, about that particular point of integrating, like the merger and acquisition the day after. How do you integrate the processes and procedures from one company to another? So that is a subject I'm very curious about, very passionate about. So we're definitely going to have more conversations about that. But yes, if our listeners want to reach out and find out more about you, because you service clients all over the United States, so you don't have to be in a certain geographical location, and they should reach out to you because they should become clients, or at least inquire about it, or ask you questions. How can they do that?
Yeah, we're on all the socials, TeKoda Accounting, anywhere you're at, we're there. And then our website, of course, is TeKodaAccounting.com. So very available, very accessible, and we're happy to have a conversation.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. It's been an amazing conversation.
Thanks for having me, Adi. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.